All right, good evening, Nigeria. Good evening, the rest of the world. You're welcome to another interesting time on Gomnet TV, the Godwin Oguche Media Network. And it's a beautiful Monday evening. I believe that your weekend was fruitful. Last week was quite hectic for our crew. We were traversing across 5 states of the country. In one of those trips, one of those journeys, we had a stopover in Lokoja, and I was a guest of John Oguche from Abuja, and we talked quite a lot about how we should indeed become, you know, purpose oriented to the point where we are, involved in developing personal capacity. And then on Friday night, I remember sharing uh, with us a few tips on how we can continue to keep our growth on. This Monday evening rather, I have with me a guest. You have him on your screen already. His name is Vincent Ogbeche Ocholi. He is an entrepreneur. He is an entrepreneur with 13 years multifaceted experience in banking, manufacturing, construction, and in the fast moving consumer goods industries. He is a passionate person, not just in entrepreneurship, but in startup. If you like, you can call him the startup nation. He is a nation all by himself. And so if he begins to talk about his startup ideas and all of the things that are going around it, indeed, these are disruptive ideas that will change the narrative of business generally. So I like for us to welcome Vincent Ogbeche Ocholi. Good evening, Vincent. And he's joining us all the way from Jalingo, Taraba State Capital.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be with you here this evening, sir. Uh,
All
I'm so
right.
elated. I'm so elated to be here.
It's exciting to have you here. And what we want to discuss this evening is a subject matter that is not very popular. It's a subject matter that is actually um, off the hook. And what is it? Your challenges as your success capital. I know that, from the Holy Writ, we find statements and scriptures like, if you fail in the day of adversity, your strength is small.
Hmm.
That means that your preparation for adversity should be an ongoing activity. I also understand that all things work together for good to them that love God
True, true, sir.
and to those who are called according to His purpose. And then we find stories in the scriptures, in the Bible. This is not a religious conversation, but I'm using this, uh, what is foundational for me to, lay out the framework for our conversation. And so we find that Joseph, in his adversity, found his purpose becoming the prime minister after 13 years of travail from the pit to Potiphar's house where he became a servant, and from there he ended up in prison, almost like from frying pan to fire. And he eventually became the prime minister of Egypt. That was the purpose for which God crafted him in the first place. But of course, through his adversities, through his challenges, he found a capital, as it were, to run his life. The one of the most challenging stuff that a lot of people don't even want to deal with is the fact that they see difficulties as a disadvantage instead of an advantage. And
Hmm.
the conversation tonight is supposed to premise difficulties, challenges as stepping stones. So we're going to share some very personal stories tonight. We have another 45 minutes to do this. So I'd like for you to set the ball rolling, you know,
Okay.
just your initial talking points on how your challenges can be your success capital.
Yeah, I think the concept is very um, simple and straightforward, or is common sense. But then, they say common sense is not common,
Absolutely.
right? Because there is a silver lining in every cloud,
Yeah.
right? So the thing is, in embedded in the challenges is actually the success capital. So discussing the concept of success vis-a-vis challenges, we are basically saying that if there are no challenges, then success is is not reachable. Success is far away. Success is not something you can aspire to. But if you are somebody who aspire for success, then challenges becomes the thing that you need. Like in one of my book, I wrote a statement. I said the road to success is called failure. So if you want to get to
Wow.
success, you must walk on that road. Because
Okay.
if you are afraid of failure, then the road that will take you to success is what you have avoided. So
Absolutely.
challenges in itself, yeah, challenges in itself come with that success factor in it. But your responsibility is now to begin to unravel it like an onion peel. You begin to unravel it as you go on that journey, and voila, you are there. And then people look at you and say you are lucky, but you are not actually lucky.
You came through a process,
Exactly.
and every war general has got scars.
Absolutely, sir.
So it may sound very simplistic. It may sound very, like you say, commonsensical. And common sense, like you alluded to, is not common. Uh, what are the basic examples you can give from your own personal life that
Okay.
were challenges that looked like a dead end and eventually that path led you to something very profound? So
Okay.
let's begin to share some personal stories. By the time you are done, I will share a brief of mine and then we'll take the discussion further from there.
Okay. All right. So, my background is engineering. I graduated from the university with a degree in chemical engineering, right? So the natural thing for me was to look out for a job related to the engineering space, and so even while I was serving, I never bothered then. The crave for my generation then was bank, working in the bank and all that. So a lot of my colleagues served in the bank, or rather, I say my colleague, a lot of my schoolmates, classmates, classmates served in the bank and then transited to working in the bank. But I was of the opinion that how can I do engineering and go and work in the bank? So I was looking out for the white collar job in sense of
Mm.
an engineering job, maybe work in a
Sure.
Slovenja or work in a Chevron or work in a Shell. So
Julius
that
Benje.
was, yes, that was the goal then. And then you finish service, you were staying in the house, nothing was forthcoming. And then it became very clear to you that, young man, you need to get out there and do something. So for me, that was a serious setback. Like, this was not what I anticipated for. This is not what I bargained for. This is not what I wanted to do with my life.
Mm.
But then I had to get something to do to earn an income. So what did I do? I get a job in a bank. Now,
Same bank.
yes, same bank that I didn't even want to have anything to do with in the first place. Right. So you see, the thing there is, um, the fact that I couldn't get, and interestingly, let me even make the story more elaborate. I was had an uncle who was working with Shell, And there was a program Shell was doing then called SITP, Shell Intensive Training Program. So at the back of my mind, I was of the opinion that, okay, maybe when I was done with school, I was going to go to Port Harcourt, go meet my uncle, and see how we can set me up with the SITP program. The year I finished school, that was the year SITP ended, right? While I was in school, NNPC was recruiting yearly then. Every year they were
Yeah.
recruiting, I think three from each state. The year I finished school, that was the year NNPC stopped recruiting.
Stop recruit.
So I saw that as a serious setback, as a serious challenge, as oh, this is not it, So I went into the banking industry. Now, when I went into the banking industry, I didn't go there because that is what I wanted to do. But I went there because I needed to do something.
Yeah.
Now, while I was working in the bank, what now happened was that it began to dawn on me about the fact that I wanted to be, because I was working in operations when I was working in the bank. And then it came to me like, this is not what I want. I want to be out there. I want to do entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
So I left the bank after 2 years, started the business. About 6 months down the line, my partner began to show some element of greed
Mm.
because I started a business with somebody and I introduced a third person, so we're three of us. The main partner now began to show an element of greed. So I told him, I wouldn't want money to cause trouble between us. So I think we need to disband this business and give everybody back their capital. And when we did that, my partner refused to give me my own capital or my own investment in the business.
Investment.
Yes. So here was I didn't have a job and I didn't have a business. So I was back to square one,
Square one.
right? But in that moment, talking about challenges becoming my success capital, it was in that moment it began to become clearer to me the ideas that I've had years ago that I could begin to implement them. And one of those ideas was the fact that right from my undergraduate days, I had imbibed this attitude of reading books, getting myself informed. And so, young man, why not write a book? You have what it takes to write a book. Of course, I never saw myself as an author. I mean, talking about the fact I just told you that I have an engineering background. So I took up the challenge and then I started writing the book. And then I finished writing the book. And while I was going through that process of writing the book, here comes the win, the federal government project. Now, because of the fact that I was working on my skill to write and to articulate my thoughts and my ideas,
Yeah.
it was easier for me to translate that into writing the business proposal for you win and going through the process for you win
Absolutely.
in partnership with my wife, actually, because it was the win for the female. And as God will have it, she was able to win it. So those elements that were isolated on the journey for me, so that being able to start a business and then the business failing or business packing up in 6 months or thereabout, and then being able to go through the rigor of writing a book, which is not naturally my uh, area
Area.
of yes of training, as it were. But of course, it's my idea. Of course, that discovery was on the journey. I began to discover that this is actually my area of gifting. So these things began to come together, and that produces that first result that I told you about. Because, truth be told, there were times that my wife just gave up on the whole thing, like I'm not interested again and all that. And then I kept encouraging her. Of course, you should understand what I'm trying to say,
Yeah.
because you also had that background, so or you had that story too. But then, because of the fact that for me it came natural, it came easy, it came like something that anytime you wake me up from the sleep, I can do
You
without
just
having
do it.
to bat an eye or something. So I kept going, and eventually we saw the result. So I think I will stop. I will pause for now and maybe allow you to chip in one or two things. But basically, that was how the first success came.
Wow, that's profound all by itself. The thing about having, you know, to find your path in what you are doing eventually may look like, for a lot of people, they will think that somebody just arrived at the scene. I have been posting some old pictures of mine, and a lot of people have been laughing at me on social media. I posted a picture of mine, in 1996. I don't know whether I can get it and post it here. So maybe I will do that before the end of the program. And a lot of people were laughing. I did say that if anybody laughs, I was going to block the person. But I was, I one of those pictures. Sorry, one of those pictures. I was asking myself,
Okay.
today, why was I smiling when I looked like I was hungry? You know, it appears there's so much noise from your end.
Yes, I think it's the
Yes,
volume of the television.
yes. Let's just tune it down. It's overshadowing our conversation.
Okay,
All right,
I think
all
it's
right.
better now.
Yes, yes.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. If it is possible to be tuned off completely, because the microphones here are very sensitive, so they are picking. I'm still picking that.
Okay.
All right. So, like I was saying, a lot of people would think that somebody just arrived in the scene. Uh, who you are today is a process that has taken quite a long time,
Very true, sir.
and personally, some of the childhood challenges that I had, if they were not there wouldn't have been any reason why I should be where I am today. In fact, they created a body of knowledge, they created a body of experience that, you know, made a pathway for me, literally. One of such example is the fact that while everybody was going through a conventional secondary school experience, I was going to a commercial school in the evenings. I never went to a conventional secondary school daytime. I would do menial jobs in the morning hours. While my mates were going to school, I was in the market pushing wheelbarrow. And by 2 o'clock, I'll close, go back home and get ready for school by 4. And this school is for 3 hours, 4 to 7. I am done. Okay. So there are selected subjects that I decided to focus on based on what I believe would become my area of focus. You know. So from the age of 12, I started to, face all kinds of difficulties with respect to, paying for school. My tuition, I had to struggle to pay for it. It's not as if my parents were late. No, they just couldn't afford it. So I ended up spending only 2 years in the secondary school. By year two, I could write, I could I just tried WAEC and I got all my papers. And that was the end. So at 15, I started working. And
Wow.
from then
Wow.
till date, every educational qualification I acquired, I acquired through part-time activities. So I started
Wow.
working at 15. By the time I left the bank at 36, I had worked for 21 years. All right. So at 36, I had worked for 21 years. Now, if I was to go through a conventional educational process, all right, your network is shifted there. So, if I was to go through a conventional educational process, I wouldn't have started working at um, at at 15 or 14. And I would not, by any means, have worked for 21 years by the time I was 36. So, in a nutshell, my challenges became my success capital. All right, my challenges became my success capital. So I think we're having problem with Mr. Vincent's network from Jalingo, and I am certain that he will be back. We have Mr. Kolawole Olowo dropping a thought here. He said, "My boss is discussing serious issues here. Let me pay rapt attention." Okay, it's nice to have you, uh, Enio Kolawole Olowo. So we're going to take a brief break, and I'm going to welcome Vincent back. He's off the network right now because of the challenge of connectivity. He's joining us from Jalingo, the Taraba state capital. So your challenges can always become the stepping stones. And that's the reason why we should never see our challenges as um, disadvantages. They are never a disadvantage. They are rather a plus. It depends on the attitude that we bring into the fray that will determine how we, you know, turn out. It's always about our response to every challenge. The response to every challenge will determine eventually the the amount of success we get from that. So, Mr. Vincent is back. We
Sorry.
lost we lost you there
Yes.
momentarily because of the network. But
True, sir.
I would
Sorry
stop.
about
I
that.
will stop. I will stop here because I know you got arrested by something I said, and maybe you pick the thoughts from there. Pick the thoughts from there, and try to share with young people, especially, how that it is very necessary to be process inclined.
All right. So the thing is this, like you were saying, um, see, like Les Brown will always say, you don't get in life what you want.
Mm.
You get in life who you are.
Who you are.
You don't get in life what you want. You get in life who you are. So that goes to say that who you are is what you get.
Mm.
So what you are getting right now simply means that is who you are. In another way, like the scripture will say, as you think, so you are.
You are.
So there is not one single person that has been made in this world today that didn't go through a process. Not one.
Mm.
Let's take note of that. Two, there is not one single person that is made that did not go through challenges. Three, there is not one single person that is made today, in the sense of is made, that didn't fail at one point or the other, or what we call failure,
Yeah.
at one point or the other. So now let me give you another side of my story.
Mm.
I graduated from the university with a degree in chemical engineering. And right now, as I'm talking to you, I'm working in a company as a trainer. I'm training. Now, question, what is the relationship between chemical engineering and
Engineering
training?
and training.
What's the relationship? So, how did I get to becoming a trainer? I will tell you the story. One day, after I graduated from secondary school, I had a crush on a young girl who was in my neighborhood. And so I penned down my thoughts.
Mm.
I didn't do poetry, I didn't do literature, I didn't do any of that. I'm a pure science student. But I just penned my thoughts. And then I showed some of my friends in the neighborhood, like, look at what I wrote. To. And one of them said to me, young man, you should be a writer. You are good. Way back in secondary school days. I just finished my secondary school. But I took it as one of those things, one of those things. So that was even before I went to the university. And then I went to the university, I read chemical
Yeah.
engineering, I graduated. And but while I was in the university, I started interacting with materials, like I said, started reading started reading Les Brown, Miles Moreau, started reading
Mm.
John C. Maxwell, started reading Brian Tracy, started listening to that tape. Those days used to be cassettes, you know,
Yes.
buy those cassettes, you play those cassettes. Like I was in Kaduna, I was brought up in Kaduna, so we used to go to Link's bookshop. There's a bookshop called Link's Bookshop in Kaduna, where you buy those tapes, you come home, you play them over and over again, and then Robert Kiyosaki, we were introduced to Robert Kiyosaki, and I fell totally in love with him and all that. So I started building that background in my undergraduate, maybe 300 level or so. So when I finished school and I went into the banking industry, I just knew it wasn't for me because the thing that was going on at the back of my mind was wealth creation. I wanted to create wealth. I wanted to be able to be that guy who is giving a lot of people opportunities, right? So I left, okay, let me start the big journey of entrepreneurship. I started my business, then the business failed because everything went south. And then when everything went south, let me tell you a very interesting story. My banker friend said, Guy, come back to banking. I said, no, I'm not coming back to banking. Some of them looked at me and said, this guy, you are not serious with your life at all. How can you take care of your wife and his son without a job?
Good job.
But I was determined to go on my entrepreneurial journey. So what did I do? I started a business without money. How did I do that? I had a friend who was selling some very unique items. I met him. I said, please, can you give me these things to sell? This is a graduate. Mind you, I'm a graduate. Give me these things so that I can sell, and then will pay you the money. So he agreed, and we agreed on how much I was going to pay him. So I was making a markup of around between 200 to 500 on each of those items when I sell. So I took a backpack, put those things inside, and was trudging the streets of Kano selling those things. And then after a little while, I thought to myself, why not go and get this thing and know where the source is?
Mm.
While I was doing this, I was writing my book. While I was doing this, we were doing the win thing, right? So I was
Yeah.
selling, and then I finally went to the market, found out where the source was, and I realized that the markup was about 1,000, 1,002.
Mm.
So then what happened? The win now happened. So I transited from having to sell those things to now
From
focusing on building the win
yeah.
business, right? So, but
Yeah.
now let me fast forward many years down the line. Many years down the line, now I'm involved with two startups that I sit as one of the directors of the businesses. And like I was sharing with you, they are ideas that are going to be disruptive to both the fintech and the supply, what do you call it, food supply chain, value chain business in this country. Those two businesses that I'm involved with as startups are going to be very disruptive to this space or to this industry. But we didn't just come here overnight. It was a journey that was filled with falling and falling and falling, having bruises and having bruises, and making it look as though there was nothing else that was going to come out for you or for us. Talking of my family now. So it was looking like it was the end of the road. But it was in each of those moments that clarity will come to me as to what next to do, right?
Yeah.
For instance, you win. We were to do a tomato paste. It was a tomato paste business we were supposed to do. The amount of money that we were given was less than what we even needed. So we embarked on the project. And then it got to a point, everything just came to a standstill because the last tranche of the money wasn't coming. The
Coming.
things we were doing where we had not finished, we needed money to continue. So it looked like we have hit another what do you call
Rock bottom.
roadblock, rock bottom. Like after you got this money, it was blah 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 blah. But it was in that moment clarity came to me again. Young man, you need to get something doing. Now, what is that something that I'm going to do? The something has to do with an area that is consistent with my giftings and abilities. Because, like I told you, on the journey, it began to become clear to me that I have a lot to do with people development.
Yeah.
I had a lot to do with people development, and that was why I started partnering with you. I started partnering with our friend of blessed memory, Maxwell.
Yeah.
I started partnering with Synergy to begin to do trainings
Mm.
because I saw that as one of my strengths, as one of the, I mean, something that comes natural. Writing came natural for me. Then ability to share my knowledge or share my idea with people also came natural for me. So I now began to build myself in that area. Now I didn't have a job or anything as well, but I began to build my ability, build that skill, hone that skill. And then when this opportunity came, it was very easy for me to transit into it
Into
because,
it.
yes, I had
You
already
were
laid
already you were already a trainer.
a trainer. So it was just like a square peg in a square hole, as the case may be. And so,
Let me interrupt your thoughts and ask you this question. Now,
okay,
for somebody who says, I read civil engineering or I read mechanical engineering or whatever course you read, and you did not have any certification in this
okay,
aspect of people development, training, and capacity building. There was no formal training, there was
yes,
no formal certification. But here
yes,
you are, you know, now a trainer in a multinational company. And
yes,
from what I know, that you oversee a vast portion of northern Nigeria. That's why you're in Jalingo now. And
yes,
the
sir.
next moment you're in Bauchi, the next time you're in another state. But this, you had nothing to do with this in your 4 years in the university. How
Very
do you
correct.
speak to today's young people to say that the certificate you got from the university shouldn't be a hindrance for you to explore other areas of your life?
Very true, sir. In fact, I'm very excited about this question you're asking me because this question has a lot to do with my first book that I wrote,
Yeah.
you know, and my first book, my first book that I wrote had a lot to do with answering this question. And let me explain to you how I mean. Research have shown that 80% of graduates regret what they graduated from the university. So
The
eight
course
out
they
of
read.
every the course they read from the university. So 8 out of every 10 Nigerian students have this regret about the course they read. Fact. You can go and check it
Wow.
out yourself. Just do a simple what do you call it? Um, questionnaire and ask people
Yeah.
around. You will always get that response of they gave it to me or I just decided to. There's only a few instances that you see people excited about what they have graduated from the university. Some of them even did very well in the course, but yet it wasn't. what they wanted to
Yeah,
do.
passion.
That's number one. So number two, a lot of people were not guided. You know, like when we were in secondary schools, they said we had a guidance and counselor. But what the guidance and
Yes.
counselors were doing was, this student is a naughty student. He said, go and meet guidance and counselor. This student is a stubborn student. Go and meet guidance and counselor. They were not guiding or counseling people as regards career choice. They didn't
They
have
were
that expertise.
punitive.
Punitive. So here you have people like, for instance, myself now having the idea that, oh, chemical engineering, oh, it has to do with chemistry and all that. And then I got the shocker of my life when I went to the university and I discovered that chemical engineering is not chemistry. So that's why I wrote that first book. And the idea of the first book is that there are three elements that must be checked before a young man should go to the university. Three things that must be checked. One, the what we call the innate abilities, the personality of that person. What is your personality? For instance, I know my temperament. I know my personality. I'm a sang male, meaning I'm a sanguine melancholic. So people need to know their personality. They need to know their traits because it goes a long way to help you understand who you are. That's why Tim LaHaye wrote that book, Why You Act the Way You Do,
You do.
right? So now I know who I am. I know that I'm a sangmel. Two, what are your areas of interest? You need to know the things that interest you before you even take that leap of, okay, I want to go to the university to read physics or to read all this or to read that. You need to know the things that interest you. Then the third thing, you need to know your abilities, your giftings. There are some things that come natural for you. Let me use myself as an example. Now, if you do a simple research, you will discover that the greatest salesmen on the planet called Earth are sanguines
Wow.
because talking comes naturally for sanguines. They can talk for Africa. Let me use our parlance. So now I I couldn't relate my giftings in all my personality trait, which is sanguine, to my giftings, which is writing, an ability to communicate. I couldn't relate that. So I went to school to study chemical engineering. Well, if I had gone through this process of the book that I wrote where I explained these things, I would have just known that, oh, I don't need to study chemical engineering. Maybe I need to study language.
If you
I
had
need to,
read your own book before going
if
to the
I read my
university.
own book, fantastic. Very correct. That's what I would have done. Right? So now, coming to the other aspect of your question, okay, you have gone to the school like me, you have done chemical engineering. So, what do you do? That is when you now begin to school yourself. The other school, what do we call that? The unconventional, not the conventional now. That's when you now
Informal.
go to the informal school. The informal school. Thank you for that. Because what we went to was a formal school, right? That is when you now go to the informal school, the school of hard knocks, where you now begin to learn from those people who have gone ahead of you. And while you are on that journey, you will now begin to unravel a lot of things. You now begin to come into a lot of things. You now begin to understand some things about yourself that you never even knew were there. So all hope is not lost. Because, for instance, reading chemical engineering or being an engineering student gave me an analytical mind. It
Right.
helps me to look at things analytically. When I'm thinking from that perspective. So that for me is a big plus that I have an engineering background, right? So whatever you have studied, whatever you have read, all hope is not lost. What you can do is to now begin to see how you can school yourself. Because like you were saying, the training I'm doing right now has nothing to do with my degree. There is no bearing at all. in relation to my degree and my training, the job I'm doing right now. So you can fit into any sphere when you discover your interest, you discover your ability, and you discover your temperament, and you harmonize, you synergize these three things to your own advantage. More like you do a SWOT analysis on it, and then you focus on the strength and the opportunities that can come out for you, and then the sky is even your starting point.
Wow. Those are profound thoughts. If you're just joining us, this is Government TV, and we're having a conversation on the subject of your challenges as your success capital. My guest is Mr. Vincent Ocholi Ogbeche. He is an entrepreneur who has over 13 years of multifaceted experience in banking, manufacturing, construction, and the fast moving consumer goods industry. He is passionate about startups with disruptive ideas. We have been discussing the subject matter and he has shared quite a lot with us. Now, let's take a home stretch with our conversation and let's talk about failure. How can a man or a woman make failure a stepping stone? What kind of attitude should we bring to the fray when we start a business, when we fail at something? How should we get back up and continue the journey? Because I have learned that concentration and focus is what produces results in the long run. All right. When you are consistent, even if you fail at something, eventually you will get the result that you desire. So, what kind of attitude should we bring into the space of failure so that we do not give up just because we made a mistake or we failed?
Okay. Um, Failure is not failure until you accept defeat.
Mm,
You know, I was reading Donald Trump's book way back some years ago, and he made a statement. He said he went bankrupt, right? Donald Trump,
mm,
billionaire. That was before he became they had anything to do with the presidency. He became bankrupt, and he was said he was walking down home from the office one day, and he saw a beggar by the roadside, and he looked at the beggar and he said to himself, "You are richer than me." A billionaire who became bankrupt looked at a beggar sitting by the road and he said to himself, "This beggar is richer than me because this beggar does not have liabilities."
absolutely.
You know, but that same man bounced back. So, what's the catch here? The catch here is this: it is when you accept it that it becomes it. If you do not accept, then it is not it. And like I said in the statement I made earlier, failure is the road. Mark the words I'm using. I'm very choosy about my words. Not a road. Is the road that leads to success. Definite article. You want to go to success avenue, then you must travel on the road called failure. So when you have that mindset, then failure is now not failure. Failure is just you realizing that this thing cannot work like this. You have to do it like this. Failure now becomes, like I said in my book also, failure now becomes a teacher that is guiding you, that is instructing you. But the interesting thing about this teacher is that this teacher is not violent. This teacher is not, what's the word? This teacher is not somebody that makes you feel guilty.
Mm,
It's not vindictive or I think something like that. So he's just guiding you, nudging you that this is the right way to go. This is the right way to go. This is the right way to go. That's what failure does to you. But then now let's even come to understand from what our fathers who have gone ahead of us have taught us the law of success. What are the elements? What are the things that come together to make for success? One of it is persistence. And a persistent person is that guy who never gives up, who doesn't take no for an answer,
Yes.
who, because like a statement Les Brown made, he says, if you can fall down with your back and you can look up, then you can get up.
You get up.
So every time you are falling back, make sure you fall down with your back, because if you can look up, you can get up. So the thing is, one, like me, Vincent, now, I know that failure is just my road to success. So when I fail at anything, I'm not perturbed, I'm not bothered. I don't feel like it is the end of the world. I used to feel like that, but now I have a better understanding. And this better understanding has put me on that pedestal of knowing rather that failure is part of the package to where I'm going to. So it's not, it doesn't really, I just move on. But I am now more strategic. I'm now more strategic in how I go about what I was doing that led to that failure in quote, as it were. So it is until you accept it that the end. If you do not accept, it is not the end. And one of, like I said, the ingredient of becoming successful is persistence. You must persist. You must persist. You must persist. Then another very interesting ingredient that I must bring to this conversation is something I picked up when I read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hills, where he talk about the mastermind group. The mastermind group. You must look for people of like minds. I cannot write the story of my success without putting Godwin Oguche's name in that story. Why? Because people like Godwin Oguche, people like Kola Olowo, people like Freeman Musa, these are masterminds. People that when I came together and I came in contact with them, it was like me standing on the shoulder of giants. It fast tracked the success process for me. So you cannot achieve success as an island. You cannot achieve success as standalone. You must look for people who have the same idea, the same vision, the same concept, who
Same
you
orientation.
understand that the same orientation, they are going to the same direction with you. And then you can go on that journey together. I could talk of other elements to the success, but I think I will looking at the time we have spent so far. I think I
Yes.
will pause for now.
Yes, it's all, our time is almost over, but I will want you to bring your final thoughts together and express it. And I want it directed to those who manage the affairs of Nigeria. We cannot have this conversation without, touching a little at the crossroads. Um, if you were to speak to a group of politicians right now on what the essential capital is for Nigeria as a country, not our oil money, not our industries, not anything that is tangible or is touchable. What would you say to the Nigerian politician or the leader that is our capital in terms of resource that can be used to enhance the development and the growth of our country? Your final
Yes,
thoughts.
I think yeah. What I would say, my response or my reaction to that would be that let's do a simple observation or a simple study of leaders in other nations. They come, they rule, they go. A lot of them don't even have anything to show for it in terms of wealth. What's it called?
Yeah,
It
material
money,
wealth.
material wealth. Yes, they don't have much to show, but they were able to build what we call social capital. For example, Barack Obama can never be poor in his life because he has what we call social capital.
Absolutely.
that he can translate it at any point in his life into cash, into material wealth. But because of, I don't know, the orientation or the attitude of our leaders in the sense of building themselves, making themselves better, they now continue to amass and gather and put together our commonwealth. Because look at it now, how many of our leaders have left after ruling, brought from the federal to the state, that can boast of social capital? The only thing they can boast of is the wealth that they have stolen, the commonwealth of the people. That's the only thing they can boast of. So for our leaders, for them to be able to get to that point, the first thing they need to focus on is how to develop themselves, how to build themselves, how to make themselves better. You cannot give what you don't have.
Absolutely.
They don't have it, and people are expecting them to give it. They will never give it because they don't have it. One way to prove what I'm saying to you, look at our leaders giving presentations, giving a speech. You wonder who write their speech for them. But you and I know that in the developed nations, they write their speech themselves. The only thing is that their assistants just proofread it for them and all that, but they write their speech themselves. But in our country, you wonder, even the aides that they claim they have, who are some of them professors or whatever, you wonder what kind of aide will sit down to write a speech for somebody to go and read. So really, the challenge we have as a nation is that we don't we have not even built ourselves in terms of our mental capacity. I was reading a book one time and it was said that Donald Trump reads 2 books in a week. How many of our leaders can hit their hand on their chest and tell you that I read 1 book in a week
Or in a year.
or in a year? The average Nigerian read a book in a year, 1 book in a year, the average Nigerian. So they don't have this thing, they don't have the substance, and you cannot give what you don't have. So the first point of call or point of call in this conversation, as far as our leaders are concerned, is that our leaders need to begin to build themselves.
Themselves.
Leaders need to start going to Harvard Business School to learn 1 or 2 things. They need to start going. I want to hear that the governor went to Lagos Business School. I want to hear that the governor went to Kaduna Business School to learn 1 or 2 things. Then we are now setting ourselves on the right path. Because if you know that when you leave governance, you will not have problem with money, why do you don't need to steal?
Absolutely.
You don't need to steal. But the thing is, because they know that there is nothing, they are not articulate, there's no idea, there's no creativity, there's no innovation in the head of these people. So the only thing they can do is to steal the money. But if you are somebody who's creative, somebody who's bohemian, you don't need to steal any money, because this thing will come out of you. So you will now become the custodian of the wealth, you as an entity. But because, like I said, they don't have this thing, so the natural, like I was having a conversation with someone. I said, apart from Obasanjo that I'm aware of, or maybe who else, tell me a leader in this country that has written a book before, during, or after.
After.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Tell me how many leaders have written a book. How many leaders? So, and you will, I don't know, but it's my own opinion. You would agree with me, you would disagree. But Obasanjo is one of the leaders that I respect and appreciate a lot. He wasn't perfect, but you could see a lot of things that he did right. So, where am I going with this? I'm trying to say that you don't need to steal money if you develop yourself and build yourself enough to the point that you create a social capital for yourself, because social capital can be converted to material wealth.
Material wealth.
So if you have leaders in Nigeria that are creating social capital for themselves, they don't need to steal a dime.
It-
The reason why they steal money is because they don't have anything. There is nothing. Nothing. If you carry them and you turn them upside down and you shake them, nothing is going to come out.
All
So they
right.
revert and they resort to stealing the money. Thank you very much, sir.
So for leaders, their success is based on building social capital. I was
Yes.
discussing with someone recently that there is no institution in Nigeria that prepares people for leadership. Absolutely none. And that's why I have always desired, and it's a dream in my heart, and I pray that God will give me the grace to do that, that we will eventually have the University of Leadership in Nigeria. And I
Wow.
am looking forward to being in the forefront of the establishment of a leadership University of Nigeria,
Wow.
so that we can actually begin to train people who will take positions of leadership across the length and breadth of the country. Because anybody, now they say you don't even have to pass WAEC, that if you just attended, you're qualified to contest any office, even the highest office of the land. And so I think that's a huge disservice to us, and it is a disgrace of monumental proportion for anybody who is not prepared indeed to be given such a responsibility.
Yeah.
And that will define the success of any country, because everything rises and falls on leadership. So on that note, viewers, I'd like to thank you for joining us. Very importantly, I want to appreciate Mr. Vincent Ocholi, who has
Thank you
taken
so
his
much.
time to be
Thank you
with
so
us
much.
tonight. Even though he's on a road trip all the way from Jalingo, I conscripted him to be part of this program. And I am joyful that he has been able to give us uh, clarity to the subject matter. And we'll be back with another broadcast on Friday, and we'll be speaking on a more interesting subject matter. And in Gomnet TV, our desire basically is to ensure that you are well informed, you are you are positioned rightly, so that you can be the best version of yourself. That's what we do in Gomnet TV. And it's a pleasure that we have you join us wherever you are around the world today. If you're watching this as a late edition, I ask that you share it with your friends, so that this information can go around to all those people who need it. On that note, I'd like to draw the curtain on the program, and I wish you a beautiful night rest. God bless you and stay out of trouble.